benevolent act for society to help disabled person. It's a loss to them. Imagine we don't have Stephen Hawking. Imagine the loss to physics. Imagine the loss to knowledge. There are many examples like that. I've put another picture of Christopher Nolan. Some of you may be familiar with him. Okay, he's one of the best writers in the last 50 years, and he suffers from cerebral palsy. And for the first 15 years, he was completely silent. Why? Because his spasticity was so severe that he just couldn't do anything at all. One day, the doctors gave him some medications, baclofen, that made him a little bit more mobile, and his mother came up with this, she calls it a unicorn device. Unicorn device. So she attaches it to his head, and with that he's able to type. And then, since then, he has not stopped writing. And some of the best books in the last 50 years are from him. Okay? So again, an enabling device has released this man's potential, and who benefits? Us, society. Okay. Now I'll go on to my next point. So here you see a disabled person. Okay? On that day, I don't know why his hair is so white and very ruffled. But next to the disabled person is Mr. William. Mr. William is actually a mouth harmonica player. He's got muscular dystrophy. So he's got no strength in his hands. So he plays, we have a band, and he's our harmonica wind player. And he can see that he's using his mouth to play his mouth harmonica. Now, as his vital capacity went down, as muscular dystrophy got worse, his lung capacity went down, he couldn't blow anymore. So he had he needed to find an alternative way of living. So he picked up mouth painting. Mouth painting. You can see that he's holding the brush with his mouth, and he's painting here, and these are his paintings. Okay. So those of you who are familiar with Singapore, so this is a traditional Singaporean architecture. It's a mixture of Malay, Chinese, Indian sort of architecture mixed together. And then of course you can see some of these buildings here. They are scarred by the same colonial imperialist prints like India. So we have the same ugly imperialist architecture, rather than our traditional architecture. And some of you may be familiar, this is known as Little India, part of Singapore where there are a lot of Indians. So he painted all these pictures from Little India. So, now, I told you a lot about him. I told you that he is a painter, he's a mouth harmonica, he's a friend, he's a man. Okay, he used to be a jeweler. He's got many identities. But I think many of us, the first instinct when we saw the picture was, he's a patient on wheelchair. Right? So, now just like a moment ago when I looked at this gentleman who was wearing glasses, I didn't call him a myopic. I called him by whatever his identity was, his name, that he's a doctor, he's a nurse, or he's a father, he's a brother. Those are his identities. But the moment we have a disability, that becomes the overriding unidimensional identity. So I think all of us fell into that trap, right? The moment we saw him, we said this is a man on a wheelchair. He's a disabled muscular dystrophy man, right? Rather than realizing that he's a mouth harmonica player, he's an artist, he's a good friend of mine, he's a jeweler, he's got many other identities. So remember, disabled persons, just like any other persons, have multiple identities. Let's not identify them by their disability. Okay, the next one. I've got 7 concepts and I'm almost there. So this is concept number 5. Multiple evils come together. Now, so for this I need to give you a bit of background. I grew up in a very traditional Hindu sort of household. So my mother used to tell me about how there's Goddess Lakshmi. Goddess Lakshmi got many versions. So Goddess Lakshmi brings a lot of fortune and good luck and everything, right? But she brings a lot of wealth, right? So but there are many other forms of Goddess Lakshmi, right? So there is one that brings in wealth in terms of having children, wealth in terms of education, wealth in terms of houses, all kind of wealth, many different types of wealth. So he used to say that, if you do right things and you keep the house clean and everything on a certain day, Lakshmi will come. And when she comes, she'll bring in other Lakshmis. And then you'll have the whole house full of many different Lakshmis and everything will be good. But at the same time, she also told me that if we don't do things well, there is an opposite to Lakshmi. Okay, the goddess of misfortune. And if she comes, she brings in other goddess of misfortunes. And what's interesting is, in many disabled persons, multiple evils come together and compound the evil. So you will know that disabled persons often become illiterate, often live in poverty, homelessness, social deprivation, poor health, otherwise health, poor mental health, exploitation, superstition, abuse, all the other evils of society tend to be more common in disabled persons. So if we don't take into account this fact, then again our services to them are going to be compromised. So again, an important point of remembering that the sufferings of disabled person may not just be related to the impairment, but all the other evils that come together with it. Concept number 6, actually should not be 7. The discrimination of the disabled minority by the apparently able majority is not different from any other forms of bigotry. It's the same as racial, gender-based, or religious bigotry. It's the same. There's no difference. The oppression by the majority of the minority, okay, because you are putting in your values to another person who's got a different set of values, it's the same as any other form of bigotry. So we have to fight it the same way. So there is something called ableism. That means the oppression of the able-bodied person of the disabled person and making the disabled person adjust to able person's lifestyle is called ableism. Now many of you are looking at me skeptically. Oh, this is too much. There's no such thing as ableism. I'm just extending racism, ageism and all that. There's no such thing. But in a moment I'll tell you why there is. Look at our literature. Look at our lexicon. We use words like retard, lame, dumb, spas. What are these? These are medical conditions of people. We are using it as words of derogatory words. The very fact that these words are got into our lexicon is a classic manifestation of ableism. We are making fun of disabled people by using their illness to use it as words of derogatory for others. The very fact that this is still accepted, I mean, people still use words like dumb, words like lame, it's still accepted. Okay. So those of you who are skeptical of ableism, I hope I've proven you, that all of us, okay, we have to protect, just like we have to protect ourselves from racism, religious bias, gender bias, we have to protect ourselves from ableism. Concept number 7.